It was about a year ago, now that my family had took a vacation up north to Catskill Mountain. At least, that's where we were heading. We packed up the old station wagon and left our home in Philadelphia. My dad had planned this trip because he wanted us to get away from the big city and experience nature a little bit more. And let me tell you, it wasn't a pleasant ride, and being cooped up in a back seat with my brother made it all the worse. We found an amazing amount of subjects about which to argue in the few hours we had been on the road. Dad had threatened to pull the car over and even turn around to drive home several times. I didn't care because I didn't even want to go on this stupid trip anyway. Unfortunately, his threats were nullified when the old heat broke down a few miles outside of Sacramento. We were off the main highway in a wireless dead zone, and we were unable to flag down any motorists for assistance. Eventually, we had decided to head for town about a half a mile up the road. My brother and I protested having to walk, but we quickly agreed after considering what the alternative was, and that was just staying in a car while our parents went. And to be honest, I was ready to throttle that little fucker, so might as well. It was a small town, full two-story houses with white picket fences, and I remember seeing a lot of wonderful vintage cars in the driveway as we walked. A man waved at us as we walked past and said, "Howdy, strangers," in a vaguely southern accent. Looking back, everyone in that town had a bit of a southern drawl despite it being located in northern Pennsylvania. Eventually, we came across a diner near the gas station. The sun was setting, so we decided to stop to eat before asking help with the car. The restaurant was a cool, more retro sort of way, and I always liked those nice retro styles. Think Johnny Rockets, but a little more authentic. The waitress wore paper hats and poodle skirts that looked like they came straight out of the 1950s. They also had an old jukebox playing music. I remember the songs Mr. Sandman by the Choralettes, or Chortlets. I cannot pronounce that word, but you get what I'm saying. And I remember there was another song, All I Have to Do Is Dream, by the Everly Brothers, or Everly Brothers. God. Even the menu consisted of food that would be popular of the time period, and the whole experience felt like I was in a time-traveling sci-fi movie. After dinner, we went to the gas station to ask about getting our car towed. They said that the truck was out on another job, but it would be back by morning. In the meantime, we had to find a place to spend the night. Thankfully, there was a bed and breakfast in town, which seemed rather cheery, like the restaurant. It also seemed to be straight out of the 1950s and was run by a nice, lovely married couple who appeared to be constantly smiling. The husband wore a bow tie and a sweater vest, while the wife wore a dress and spent nearly the entire time in the kitchen. There, she was even baking a cherry pie and then setting it in the window. When my dad was getting us checked up for the night, I overheard him talking with a guy about what happened to his car. He responded with strange phrases like, "Golly, that's a pickle," and "Gee whiz. Wish I could help you, mister." Something about him just seemed off. And same went for everyone in town. They all seemed too nice, I guess. Of course, there was nothing wrong with being nice, but I just remember it didn't come off as being genuine. In the middle of the night, my brother and I awoke to the sound of the rustling in the trees. We were both pretty light sleepers, but the strange nature of the town made us even more on edge to investigate. So, we decided to investigate. We peered out the window, and we saw a tall, slender figure moving through the trees about a block away. We thought that it was just our imagination running wild, and that's when they came closer. We could even see their eyes glowing in the moonlight. Their wolf-like snouts are dripping red with their mouths full of sharp fangs. There were about 5 of them from what we could see. We wanted to wake up our parents and run for our lives, but we knew that they wouldn't believe us enough to look. We had to do something, though, because as we looked at the beast, we could tell that they saw us. We ran out of the bed and breakfast as fast as we could away from these fucking creatures. And that's when we ran into the sheriff's office, and he exclaimed, "Goodness me, kids, you gave me a fright. What are you doing here so darn late?" The truth wasn't the most plausible explanation, but it was all we could think of in our terror. He said, Now, don't be spinning your yarns on me. Let's get you back to your folks." He walked us back into town, but before we knew it, my brother had disappeared. I started freaking out, but the sheriff kept on insisting that he would be fine. He probably just wandered off. This did nothing to dissuade my fear. What the fuck is wrong with him? He told me to wait at the bed and breakfast while he went to go look for him. I only pretended to comply until he was out of sight, and I ran back to where we first found the sheriff. Wandering around, I called out his name, but there's no response. After several minutes, I turned around to go back to the sheriff. He was standing there with an angry look on his face. I began to back away, and he said, "I told you to stay put. Now you should have listened." His head kept on tilting to the left and right, his neck making terrible cracking noises each time he reached into his mouth with both hands and began tearing flesh out of his skull. I was frozen in fear just long enough to see his skin fall to the ground like a rubber suit underneath. It was one of those creatures. I honestly didn't know what happened after that. The next thing I remember, it was morning. My parents had learned of my brother's disappearance. They started a search party led by the sheriff, but I knew they wouldn't find anything. I went back home after a while, and I made the mistake of telling my parents what really happened. That's why I'm currently living in That's why I'm currently living in Philadelphia. And I'm currently seeking medical help because apparently I have some traumatic experiences to work through. I take pills from time to time, and that's supposed to help me a bit. My parents don't really talk to me that often now, and I'm starting to get the feeling that I remind them of my brother. But yesterday, my mom let something slip that I found very interesting. Apparently, that cheery little town that brought our family so much grief isn't even there anymore. She showed me a newspaper clipping about people having mysteriously disappeared in that area, causing it to become a local urban legend. There are rumors that believe it's a ghost town that hadn't existed since like the 1950s. Even stranger, there are people who claim to have lived there as children, but there are different accounts regarding to what state the town is a part of. On top of that, no one can remember the town's name or its exact location. A lot of people just call it Cheery Town, USA.